thank you everyone for participating to present what this is all about. So please go ahead, Stephen.
All right. Welcome everybody to this event. I think, those of you who, some of us have been on this call and talking about and planning this for a long time. And I think we all have a lot of, historical context about why we're here, which is actually the title of this session. Those of you who got the, the formal announcement. At one point in time, this was going to be hosted here at the University of Alabama. We were going to have the president of the university and all those things. But this has turned into something that's the few, the proud, and the devoted to log in across a number of time zones. But the reason why we're here now, I'm going to get to that. But the reason why we were going to be here at the University of Alabama is, quite honestly, it was an opportunity for me as the head of the Alabama Transportation Institute, which is the primary coordinating entity for all transportation research across the university, across the campus here at the University of Alabama. It was an opportunity for me to showcase to this audience, to the world. We have an international audience here. As Christopher just said, 200 people invited, maybe 60 or so confirmed, for me to showcase the work that's being done here. Particularly for people outside the U.S. I don't always know what everyone knows about the state of Alabama, the University of Alabama, and this was really a chance to showcase some of the research and transportation research and education that we're doing. So I wanted to take a very brief minute to do that, to provide a little context, and then I have some remarks that sort of segue into the why we are actually here in terms of a Podcar City event. So just real quickly, some context. This is no different than many university research centers and institutes across the country, or certainly across the world, right? So what we see here is the red. This is the transportation research and education ecosystem at the University of Alabama. You have some purple and blue boxes. Those are centers that are located in academic units: College of Business, College of Engineering, Department of Psychology, and then you see the red boxes there that those are the main office and the centers underneath the Alabama Transportation Institute, which, interestingly, unlike the purple and blue boxes, the Alabama Transportation Institute is located in the university's Office of Research and Economic Development. So we oversee the research. We coordinate with professors and students and support the educational mission. But the primary thing that we are here to do is to grow and maintain, sustain the research enterprise in a way that serves the state of Alabama primarily, but then the nation and then the global community. And I'll speak to that a bit more in a minute. But look. This is meant to be a very brief overview. I just want to hit some highlights. We're here talking about Podcar cities, but we here at the University of Alabama, I'll admit to you, the largest share of our research is automobile related and roads and bridges and that sort of thing, because that's the context here. But one of the things that I've been pushing for here, and some of my peers here, is the idea of reducing automobile dependency, reducing dependency on fossil fuels and all those things. And look, it's been an interesting time being able to do that in the last year. There's been a lot of changes in priorities with the U.S. Department of Transportation. So what we're doing is we're trying to refocus ourselves and focus on technology, focus on how transportation impacts lives, impacts economic development, impacts local economies, impacts state government, local government, federal government. And we do that by looking at, obviously, the roads and automobile mode, because it's still very important here. But we look at public transportation. We look at new technologies everywhere we can. This is a project that we're currently underway with to look at automation among transit buses. And so we actually have some automated vehicles that we're working through the University Risk Management Office here so that we can do automated and level 2, 3, and 4 bus operations here on campus, and continuing to test the technology, integrate it into operations, and get students involved, get professors involved, and continue to grow that element of the research enterprise. Opportunistically, and I'm going to speak a bit about more detailed about this tomorrow when there's a session called user-inspired research. So again, not sure what everyone knows about the state of Alabama and all. Perhaps one might be surprised that the University of Alabama has positioned itself to be a pretty central hub of electric vehicle related research. The primary reason for that is so much of the state's economy is dependent on the modern American automotive manufacturing. We have Mercedes, Toyota, Mazda, Honda, and Hyundai, plus a lot of other suppliers, and even now battery manufacturers here in the state of Alabama. An interesting related fact is, given current technology to make a car battery or lots of batteries, the primary components are lithium and graphite. It just so happens that the largest graphite deposit in North America is in the state of Alabama. And so this ecosystem that we've built around the electric vehicle industry, again, understanding that we're all sort of waiting to see, looking for guidance from the current administration on how to move this forward, both for electric vehicles and electrification, climate change, but as well as the economic potential, energy security, and all the other things that go with this. We've continued to move this forward, and have shifted off, and we are helping attract companies to the state of Alabama to further develop the electric vehicle ecosystem, less so from a research standpoint, but from an economic development standpoint for the state. And like I said, my institute is housed under the Office of Economic Development at the university. So this is part of our mission, is to help elevate economic activity and create new opportunities for the workforce and everyone in the state of Alabama. So this is a really cool thing. I'll talk about it a bit more, but what I will focus on tomorrow is why this is interesting and we think unique in terms of university-based research. Again, we're using the term user-inspired, but this covers everything from batteries, technology, vehicles, battery charging systems. We're about to deploy a automated mobile charging system here on campus with mobile chargers roving around parking lots, charging people's cars. We focus on cybersecurity. I'll talk more about that. And now we're moving into some more power grid and power storage opportunities as we diversify the portfolio so that we're not totally dependent on the electric vehicle platform while we wait on additional guidance coming out of Washington. Again, we're the Alabama Transportation Institute. One of the most important things we do is research to serve the state. We have developed a system here that has been rolled out to the local transportation department where we have central control, real-time management of traffic signals across the state. This information is piped in through fiber optic cables here to the University of Alabama. Krister and Ron saw one of our traffic management centers located in this building yesterday. And not only are we working with the state departments of transportation to make transportation better, safer, more efficient in the state, we're also incorporating students. Our students intern and they get experience working with this data and working with these systems, as well as we have a fantastic sort of built-in source to do advanced traffic management systems and intelligent transportation systems research. We look out for the state. Transportation safety as long as we are dependent on the automobile, as long as we are dependent on human drivers, we will have transportation safety issues. And I would say that the Alabama Transportation Institute, we are a leader in producing this information for the state. The map you see there, that is the state of Alabama, and the shapes are all 807 administrative postal codes or administrative divisions of the state. The ones you see in shaded red, those are the urbanized areas of the state. The ones in black, those are the locations that per capita produce the highest rate of young people who either kill or are killed in car crashes. So this is a data-driven approach that we do through our research, studying the crash data. This gets delivered back to public health offices, law enforcement offices, but particularly because these are young people, to the Alabama Department of Education to help target where they need to do driver's education and interventions with young people to make them safer and save lives. We also serve the larger region. Here in Alabama, we are part of the Southeast region, so you can see some of our neighboring states. We are in a larger US DOT supported consortium where, because much of this region of the United States, like Alabama, is quite rural, we are specifically focusing on transportation issues that affect rural areas, small towns, small cities. And this is everything from how do we deliver vehicle electrification? How do we deliver autonomous vehicles? How do we deliver better public transit? Maybe how do we deliver personal rapid transit in some of the smaller cities in the region. And so, but we work together with the other universities here to pool resources, pool talent, and collaborate. We are also part of a larger national center that focuses specifically on transportation cybersecurity. This is a very, very interesting thing. This is one of USDOT's most recent strategic plan. One of their 5 national priorities has been cybersecurity. So we do a lot of work both in our transportation engineering department and our computer science department. We have applications on quantum computing in transportation, cybersecurity, satellite attacks and vehicle hacking and all sorts of interesting topics like that. And the other thing we do is we de facto lead the policy research for that national center. So we're looking at the regulatory issues. If you get in a robo-taxi or you get in an autonomous driving car and you drive across the United States, every time you cross a state boundary, it's a completely different regulatory, legal, and insurance regime. So there's a lot of policy analysis that needs to be done. And part of the reason I'm saying this is because as we move forward, the whole purpose of this meeting, talking about podcars, talking about personal rapid transit and ESS platforms, there will be policy issues, and we want to be involved in that as well and bring that to the table and bring that to the group as a resource. We're also part of 2 other nationally significant research activities. The one here on the right, the Center of Excellence on new mobility and automated vehicles. There is interest. The person that leads this at the University of California, Los Angeles, there is interest in podcars and automated transit and that sort of thing within this center. And part of that is because Stan Young, who you'll be hearing from later on, he's with the National Laboratory of the Rockies. He's part of this center too. So there's already some collaboration, and I know it's an overused word, some synergy happening within this area already. But I want to make the point too that again, I'm speaking from the University of Alabama. I am speaking from Alabama, and I have my friend and colleague Christer Lindström, who's from Sweden, down the hall from me. So this is a global effort. So one of the things that we've done, and I'm very proud of this, and I want to talk more about this, as some of the breakout sessions and as we talk about the possibilities of how the University of Alabama can help support the Podcar City and the larger movement going forward. Again, the branding of the small, not just rural areas, but smaller cities. So I'm talking about cities of less than 500,000 people. This paper right here shows 374. We're up now to about 450 small cities across the entire United States that we've built high fidelity agent-based simulation models. We've been using them to look at robo-taxis and shared autonomous vehicles. We've been using them to look at bicycle transportation, electric vehicle transportation. I'm looking for the opportunity. I'm looking for funding support to have students turn these models to work on podcars and personal rapid transit and other platforms. But you'll also hear later this morning from one of our graduate students, again, working through some of the international collaboration. We actually took the models that we developed here in the United States and we applied them for a small case study in Uppsala, Sweden. And we did that with funding from the Swedish government through Vinnova, the Swedish Innovation Agency. And again, the synergies here. Christer was a part of this project, KTH University out of Stockholm. And so one of the things that we want to do, and part of what we're doing here, is talking about this idea and the spirit and opportunity and possibility for continued global collaboration. Douglas Kamoga is on with us from Uganda. One of the things that I am very pleased about is the University of Alabama. We have a very, very active research program across sub-Saharan Africa. We are part of a World Bank funded transportation research center based in Ghana. We are also part of a Volvo Research and Education Founding Center. The logo you see up there on the right, the Equitable Transport Center right there, access and mobility in African cities. So we are very active in the space. We do a lot of safety research, but it's not just the African content. One of my researchers here who has been involved in Podcar City, more from the Students for Future Mobility standpoint, he co-chairs the International Road Safety Task Force on Two-Wheeler Safety, and he's been working with people in Malaysia and Pakistan to look at, making two-wheelers and three-wheelers and rickshaws safer around the world. So we do have a global presence. We're proud of that, and we want to continue to leverage that and expand that through organizations and collaborations such as Podcar City and everyone here on this call. At the end of the day, we're here to make people's lives better through transportation. And I'm a trained engineer, but one of the greatest things that's happened in the evolution of my career is having and creating opportunities to work with non-engineers, to have interdisciplinary research. It just so happens that the statistics here, depending on where you look, the first or third most dangerous, most deadly job in the United States is being a tow truck driver. So we recently got a $2 million grant from the United States Centers for Disease Control to develop a new virtual reality, augmented reality training program for tow truck drivers. And we're working with psychologists and neuroscientists. So the gentleman you see there on the left, that thing on his head is a brain scanner. So we go out in the field with him, let him do his job. We have cameras, we watch what's happening, and we measure his brain activity so we know what's stressing him out. We know what his pain points are, and we take this information back into an educational and a virtual simulation environment to help create better training to make this gentleman and everyone like him across the country's jobs safer, and maybe save some lives and some families some tragedy going forward. I'll just leave this up here, but and let you just scan the article titles and maybe some of the journal titles, such as Educational Review, the British Journal of Social Work, Aging and Mental Health. The point of this is, at the university here, we do transportation research. It is not simply an engineering feat. It is not simply a technological research endeavor. We are looking at the human impacts. We work with the college, with the medical schools, with School of Social Work, the Swedish project in Uppsala that I just mentioned, that actually focused on not how robotaxis or shared autonomous vehicles could compete with the already robust public transport in Uppsala, Sweden, but how it could augment it by helping support mobilities of care. So elderly, disabled, parents with small children, how autonomous vehicles could supplement the public transport and maybe feed it and make it all more efficient. So again, it's very, very, very human focused. That's my brief remarks about the Institute. You can find us on LinkedIn. You're welcome to email me if I don't already know you. Would love to have a conversation, Zoom or otherwise. I'm always happy to get on a plane and go somewhere interesting and new. I'm always looking for new people to collaborate with. And I want to close on that, right? So again, when we started this process, many of you on the call here, we've been talking. We were planning on having an event here at the University of Alabama. I hope that we can do something like that one day soon. But given a lot of things that have happened, much of which has been out of our control, political and otherwise, we've found ourselves back in the digital world. But we're here to collaborate. We can collaborate in this forum and we can seed new collaborations, make new connections. And that's what I hope to do with this, Krister. I appreciate we've been meeting and talking about this for a long time. I appreciate you entrusting the University of Alabama, me and Eric Corshane, my program director, who you all will hear more from later. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad to see everybody here, and I'm looking forward to a lot of good interactions. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Krister.
Okay, I want to make just a few remarks before we continue with the program. I just want to be clear that I'm going to use my youngest daughter question that she wanted me to answer, and that is, are you only doing podcasts? And I said, no, that's not what this is about. It's about believe that I believe that is this the pinnacle of human development and ingenuity for mobility for the future for the next 5-10,000 years to go? And of course not. No, everyone I ask that question, do you think that's it? And everybody says the same thing. Yes, of course, there has to be something else. And I'm trying to explain that's what I'm doing. I'm starting to think, can we do better, basically? Is there any way we can do it better? And so far, the only solution I found that is not incremental to existing systems, like not just a car with a gas engine, and now it's electric. Okay, it can be self-driving. Okay, it has better security. But for me, that's all band-aids of existing problems with the current paradigm. Or a bus that is electric, maybe it can go faster, can be platooning or something like that. All those things, same thing again, same with trains. I'm not against any of those developments. However, I don't want to focus on that. I would focus on something, what can we do that is significantly better? And I've been focusing on that idea and find how can we do that? How can we propagate that idea, and how can we get funding for this kind of ideas? And the only technology I've seen so far that can actually live up to the possibility to have a completely new paradigm, and that is Podcar technology, ATN, or self-driving cars on its own guideway, etc. Preferably solar powered, etc. It's the only ones I've seen that could fit that possibility to actually have it change for the future. So this meeting is very much about what can we do for the future, and not in the current paradigm, but what can we create a new paradigm? What does this entail? And the work that's done, for example, in San Jose State University, at an MTI, at the Alabama Transportation Institute, NREL, many other places, there's been a lot of good work, and there's tons of data. That's something that's very valuable. So the question is, how can we use existing data, existing experience, and create a new research filter or paradigm for do better mobility? So my focus to answer my youngest daughter, I said, what I believe in is having youth involved. So this meeting for these couple of days is very much about youth programs and getting funding for that. And it's not only that, it's also how to do that. And the way to do it is to have, I call it the 10 Commandments. Hope I don't offend anyone, but it's basically, instead of incremental research, it's better to set aside at least to some degree in what do we want to have. So instead of saying, okay, how can we do it better? Maybe do it better. How can we make it better? And so those commands are very simple. How can we? It's a question. Can we do a much better system, a much better paradigm for use much less earth resources, and the same time use much less energy, in the same time make it faster, more accessible for everyone. Can it be comfortable? Can it has the capacity we need, etc.? So we put all those questions, and we challenge youth teams to come up with ideas. So we are basically an incubator of youth ideas and future ideas for mobility. And it doesn't has to be podcasts, but it's you so far the only ones I've seen been able to match ideas in that ecosystem. So this meeting is much about existing examples, what has been done in the past, future, and some of the coming technologies. I look forward to see many of those presentations coming here. But the main theme of this session today, tomorrow, etc., for these 3 days is all about how to create funding and resources and experience for young people in the world to work on this. One of the examples, of course, Douglas is one of the shining example of people doing that, and Kanu, and so the many people are involved in this, and I very much would like to help them to design the future. I realize we cannot get people out of the car overnight. That's not going to happen. And of course, we have existing systems with trains, buses, and light rail, everything. There's nothing wrong with those. But we need to think beyond this. It's very important. So this is what it's all about. How can we, in the contemporary ecosystem of mobility, a lot of good efforts to do better things, and then think beyond that. So that's what this is all about. So with that, I'd like to pass on to next.
Krista and I began with Magnus, who's also here, the Podcar City program starting in 2007. And what I'd like to suggest is that several of you here in this meeting have some information to present. Now, today, our focus is on community, and tomorrow at this time is our focus on the industry and technology. There certainly can be some overlap. I would like to suggest that anybody who has a little presentation to make, would like to say something, that you put that into the chat, so as we move forward, we can call upon you individually and separately, or together. In this first period here, we would like to have those presentations, and then we'd like to open the session to broader conversation and come back to what Steve said at the get-go here, which I thought was very, very appropriate and welcoming, is that we're here to find ways to collaborate. Our competition is not amongst each other so much as it is to have our voice heard and our technology available for people to see, so that people can begin to have a real world model of what this actually looks like.
Hello, everybody. So I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, it works fine. Go ahead.
Great. Okay, just so yeah. Hi, I'm Douglas, and I'm representing from Podcar City, East Africa, joining online from the Pearl of Africa. So just a brief about me. I'm an urban planner working with the Ministry of Lands, Housing, and Urban Development. So on this call, I'm with a couple of colleagues from Uganda here who are into academia. One of them is a student, and then I invited a few people in academia, like Mr. Michael Mpindi, and just represent the part of East Africa. Now, Podcar City East Africa is something we are starting up with Krista, Ron, and the entire Podcar City team. And the idea is to diversify our reach globally. Dr. Stephen talked about their impact in Africa, based in Ghana and sub-Saharan Africa. So this is also part of that in registration, to ensuring that the goals and the visions that we are aiming at as podcasters, as people or drivers of sustainable mobility, reach far and wide globally. So why we are here? We are here because mobility is no longer a future debate. It's a present urgency. Yes, we are here because conventional mobility systems are not keeping pace with the speed of urban growth. We are here because basic daily movements, school, work, healthcare, is unpredictable, relying on driver mode, seasonality, and the hour of travel. We are here because travel experience is often a misadventure, unsafe, expensive, and exhausting. People just focus on getting from A to B and not the beauty within. We are here because mobility challenges directly affect livelihoods, family relationships, and dignity. We are here in East Africa. This is not a future discussion. It is a present challenge. People need safe, affordable, low-emission mobility that connects daily life, schools, healthcare facilities, jobs, and communities. So I want us to I want to take you through a day in the life of a typical non-driver commuter in East Africa, a person who prefers to use the only publicly available door-to-door means of transit in downtown Kampala, Nairobi, Dar es Salaam, or any other cities in East Africa. So at about 6:30 a.m., the journey starts with the walk to the road. Around 6:50 a.m., let's say 20 minutes walk, around 6:50 a.m., many people rely on a border to continue their trip. The reason why I'm bringing a border here is because this is the one publicly available means of transport that can get someone from their door step to the nearest to their destination. Yes, the last mile means of transit being maybe their feet. Yeah. So many people rely on a border to continue their trip. For many users, borders come with uncertainty around personal safety, around route reliability. Will actually this rider choose the best optimal route to the destination? Around exposure to weather and road conditions. So for that case, when it rains, as you can see in the lower corner there, as you can see here, if it rains, then that trip is going to be delayed. Yes, or the user is going to reach when they are actually wet. So depending on if traffic builds up, arrival can shift from 8:30 to 9:30. In other words, late. When rain can leave the commuter wet. Yes, dry weather often means arriving covered in dust. By the time work starts, energy and focus are already reduced. At midday, even a hospital visit, for example, someone wants to take just a skip out of work and just go to the hospital visit. Even a hospital visit can be difficult. It may require multiple transfers, uncertain timings, and further exposure to weather and congestion. Many people postpone essential trips because of the fear of the hassle. By 6:30 p.m., the return home means high costs due to rush hours, long travel time, discomfort, and mental stress. This is not what we are solving here is not only a transport problem. It is a productivity, health, and dignity problem. So why this forum? This is why we are here. To move from isolated ideas to coordinated implementation. To create a shared platform where academia, industry, and government in various regions can work together to design practical, deployable solutions. We should align around 3 outcomes. First, clear problem statements tied to real communities and workable solutions. Second, identify and learn from priority pilot use cases backed by partnerships that can be tested and improved. Third, establish collaboration models that scale from pilot to regional implementation. Here is a draft of something we worked on last year together with Ron and support from VUBA. So this is a street in Kampala. It's one of the main roads. It's called Kampala Road. So we took an existing situation analysis just like this. And for example, because as Crystal said, we cannot just tell everybody, get off the car and just all of a sudden switch to another means of transport. But we can, in a phased manner, actually get people to ride better, to move better from A to B. So keeping that green space there as a driveway, we went ahead and simulated a transition using the exact right of way of how we can actually transform an urban neighborhood in downtown Kampala into a place that could host sustainable mobility options. And we all know about podcasts, so I don't need to preach the gospel here. I'm talking to the converted. But this is just to show us that there is potential and viability within the East African region. There is potential and viability within the East African region. And here is one of the prominent buildings in the city. And we did something of how the exact existing situation can be actually supplemented with the better way of movement. Krista always asks, is there, we can do better. Yes, so this is an illustration of how that can be done. And one of the ways that we look at partnering and building this is through the Students for Future Mobility. And this is what we call a practical way. I'm going to talk briefly about it because Eric is going to go deeper onto this. But through the Students for Future Mobility, this helps us build local capability early through student-led innovation. It connects students. Through the program, we can connect students to real transport challenges, create a pipeline for future practitioners who can support pilot implementation and long-term scale. So a call to action here for each and every one of us who's here is that one of the ways that we can actually make a change is by impacting the youth and the young adults, the people to whom the tomorrow belongs, yes, who are going to be here 100 years, 50 years from here, who are going to be the policymakers. And this is one of the ways through which we can reach out to them by heading out to the schools and impacting them in a way that our values, Krista talked about the 10 commandments, that the values that we have for a sustainable future, for a transportation system that actually represents the virtues that we have. This is the way we can reach out to them. And for us, we use the Students for Future Mobility as a bridge between research and implementation. You will see this and more as Dr. Buff Farman and Ron Swenson also share on the same regard in future discussions. So please stay connected for all the future discussions. What East Africa brings on table? So East Africa will bring urgency, growing demand, and committed local partners. And I'm using the case here of East Africa, but actually the whole of Africa is a very potential market base for the virtues and the goals that we want to achieve. So we bring urgency, growing demand, and committed local partners. So partnerships through our governments. Our governments actually, like for example, this is a picture of the president of Uganda actively engaging with local and international investors to start up enterprises within the country. This is called the Kira EV. So our governments are actually willing to get engaged in constructive ideas with change makers, global change makers, international and local global change makers, through policy makers within our parliaments, which are issuing laws to support sustainable transportation. For example, in Uganda, we have the recently approved Physical Planning Act that talks about environmental sustainability and transportation. So through our governments are also willing to coordinate, yes, and offer spaces. Like, for example, this is a site in Ginger for the same Kira EV, because if you have a viable idea, a viable option, which we have as Podcar City, as all of us here engaged into the transformation of urban mobility, which we have. So what we need in East Africa, we need co-development, we need technical support, implementation partners, we need financing mechanisms. If we act now, if we do this well, this workshop is not just a meeting, it is a start and a continuation in many ways of a credible deployment pipeline for 2026 and beyond. This workshop should be the point where intent becomes implementation. Yes, and with that, I want to thank you very much and pass it over to Krista.
Thank you very much, Douglas. I appreciate that. Okay, Eric, do you feel better now? Is it okay to continue now?
Hey guys, I'm jumping in. Sorry about that. This is we're all in different life stages. All my children are grown, and Eric has small children. And he had just gotten a call from his wife, so I'm stepping in for him right now. So let me get to that. Well, he tends to other important business. All right, let's see. So as Eric was saying, right? So we've developed here this ACES squared mobility competition. That's ACES squared is a little term that we've come up with for the Alabama Transportation Institute. Automated, connected, electric, safe, and shared transportation. So safe and shared, that's the ACES squared. So we've been for a couple of years now, we've been developing this curriculum aimed at what we call K through 12 here in the United States, or primary school students, primary and very early secondary students. And this has been a twofold effort. We've done a lot of things that have been really interesting hands-on activities, automation, little robot control vehicles and things, a lot of hands-on activities for school children. But one of the other things that we've done is we've targeted actual educators themselves, and so we've developed a package of curricula that teachers can go in and use in their classrooms. And we've actually gotten this certified and approved by the transportation board. I'm sorry, the education board here in the state. So these are lessons that promote sustainable transportation. Again, automated, connected, electric, shared, all of that can be used in an official capacity to meet state science and math requirements and other things. So Hope Whiteside, who runs the program under Eric, has developed this, and she's done it in a number of middle school and some primary schools. So you can see here, I was just kind of talking some about that, but we've been really focusing on what's called in the U.S. the STEM students, STEM education, STEM teachers, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And so we've built this program, and we've launched this competition. You can see here, this is where some of the various standards that some of these are statewide, some of these are national standards. And the reason is, as Eric was saying, we're piloting this right now in the state of Alabama, but the goal is to move this and have teams compete from around the country. I'm sure Ron and I suppose Dr. Furman would know of the Garrett Morgan student competition, which is a transportation related competition that's actually administered out of the Mineta Transportation Institute at San Jose State. So we actually competed in that last year and learned from things. We had a school system here compete. And so there is a precedent for these national level opportunities to get children involved in these things. And so we're doing it here, piloting our own version of this. It really focuses on sustainability and technology and that sort of thing. And we're also already making moves to move this to the international space. And as we do so, that will be a very interesting opportunity to adapt it to other curricula, other contexts, whether it's Uganda, whether it's Sweden or Malaysia or anywhere else in the world that we would be fortunate enough to do this. But the other thing is it, I mean, I think the amazing thing would be is for these children who participate in these activities to be collaborating and creating their own global dialogue and collaborations and who knows what sort of relationships and things that could turn on into the future. I mean, as you know, Douglas said, I mean, why are we here? We're here to come together and make transportation better for everyone everywhere, right? So, you know, one of the things that we are working into our curriculum here is specific information, specific elements on Podcars, on PRT. There's lots of information that we've been, you know, we've gotten information from Ron and Peter Muller and Krister and everywhere we can on the web. And we are interested in and happy for more information. You know, as we move forward, we will be looking for external judges as we try to take this competition on a national and international scale. So there's lots of opportunities for the professional community, some of which is represented here, to be involved. And again, doing this, the top line there with the adaptable standards and aligned curriculum, doing this in a way, certainly in the US, that meets, you know, certified educational requirements, Common Core and other these things, makes this very easy for school teachers to bring this information into the classroom. So while children are learning science and mathematics and different concepts, they're also being introduced to Podcars. They're being introduced to sustainable transportation, and we will continue to build and expand that. This is how the thing is structured. We go out. Right now, we're piloting it in the state. It's sort of a word of mouth, working through particularly Hope, who she has a PhD in educational leadership and technology, and so she has a wealth of contacts around the state and different school systems. So word of mouth, we're recruiting teachers, they're recruiting their students, and you can see as we step through here, we're acclimatizing both the teachers and the students to the background information, to sustainable transportation, to the basic terminology, the basic lingo, and then we will move them through, and with mentors provided by ATI and having some of our students involved, our PhD and master students involved, we will mentor these students and help them progress through their competitions. I mean, through their own entries and their own work, and then they work towards the competition, and there'll be award ceremonies and all the things that incentivize children and their teachers to participate in these type of things. They will, you know, this will be hands-on. There's a digital component. There's a presentation component. They need to build little scale models and things. We're still working through those details, but there's a lot of opportunities. I've seen some of the scale model work that's been done through some of the previous Students for Future Mobilities competitions. And so, you know, we didn't invent this idea. We're not starting from scratch. What we're doing is learning from the community out there and trying to take this, first pilot it here in Alabama, that helps us get this message out. I mean, look, if nothing else, by the end of this semester, there will be a whole lot of children in various parts of the state of Alabama talking about Podcars who prior to that had no idea they existed. And this is how we change hearts and minds and educate people and set aspirations and that sort of thing. This is what we're developing. We are actually providing this. We're developing this information. We're providing it to the teachers, and they provide it to their students. Physical kits to build models with, very basic 3D modeling software, and the other things that you see here as we move these curriculum. I mean, move through the curricula in the classroom and get it up to the competition level so that the various teams can do their work. We want to do this globally. I mean, Douglas, let's talk. We're already talking with a school system in Nigeria. And again, these things happen opportunistically. I think everyone on this call is here because of some personal professional collaboration relationship. It just so happens that one of the student workers that is that's supporting Hope Whiteside, the creator of the program, happens to be from Nigeria, and back home in Nigeria was a school principal, was actually a headmaster for a school, and has great contacts in the educational system there in that district. And so we are this summer we'll begin. Hope's going to travel to Nigeria, and we're going to begin to try to pilot this in Nigeria, work out the kinks, see how it works, see what the differences are, with the idea of supporting Podcars, supporting Krister, supporting Ron and this group, and Students for Future Mobilities, to take this thing global. And everyone on this call is we look for support and guidance and interest and all of that. That's really just a brief introduction to that. Let's see if I can find the mouse and stop the share. Let's see.
Thanks, Stephen. How is Eric? Is it okay? I got to be concerned about him. So everything's fine.
I think he's okay. His little one was sick last week, so I mean I don't.
Okay, just
all
make
of us
sure
with kids have been there. So,
thank you.
Stan, you had a question?
Yes. What you were sharing really struck a nerve. My wife is the head of the department for mathematics at the local high school. I was looking over her shoulder the other day and I go, is that what I think it is? And she goes, yeah, it's graph theory. For those not familiar, graph theory is the basics for all this modeling that Stephen mentioned, and they're teaching it in high school now, just the basics, kind of an algebra approach. But I couldn't help but thinking, graph theory as a practicum for high school mathematics is directly applicable to start thinking about the logistics of roadways, conveyances, and mobility. So good opportunity there.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I can speak for, earlier in my career, just as you get into different things, as certainly as a young professor, being engaged in some school, primary, secondary school outreach here in Alabama. And it was actually funded by the Alabama Department of Transportation. And I certainly remember it as being a solidly well constructed program. But what I can tell you is it didn't touch on the topics that we're talking about here. Everything Douglas mentioned about the humanity of transportation. So often these STEM focused children primary education things, it's so easy with STEM to drill into the technology, but the more we make we connect these children's minds with quality of life, and however they conceive that, with sustainability, however they conceive that, with their own sense of how they move around, maybe how their elderly grandparents move around or don't move around, and we can get them thinking about sustainable transportation and how it can affect their lives. And I think this is a real opportunity. So, and we would love to come do it in Colorado, Stan. So,
thank you, Stephen. And okay, so I'd like to move over to Henry Grew. It's interesting. He's a Finnish guy sitting in Sweden that is 50% American, presenting for Alabama. And this is one of the examples of a student future mobility program that we are pursuing right now. So please go ahead, Henry.
Thanks. Yeah, as Krister said, my name is Henry Grew. I've been working as an urban planner in Sweden for about 20 years. I've been an adjunct professor at the local university here, and now I have a small consultant company, and I'm collaborating with Krister on this on Podcar City. Sort of my background. And I live in the city of Gävle, which is about 100 miles north of Stockholm. It's a mid-sized city with about 100,000 inhabitants. And so we've been looking for different places in the city to start this project, or different places in Sweden. And Gävle has, about 30 years ago, they had this rail system analysis study done. So there's sort of a history in the city they never built or implemented the system, but the politicians and the civil servants at the city have this sort of idea that we could test. It's a perfect test bed for implementing these ideas, or at least testing these ideas. And Christer and I have looked at the neighborhood of Andersberg. It's what we call it's a 60s neighborhood, which in Sweden, in a Swedish context, meant that this is where Le Corbusier got his way. A functional neighborhood surrounded by or shut in by road networks, heavily influenced by functionalism in the design. And it's very car dependent, has a lot of social issues. I don't know if you're aware, but Sweden has the highest rates of violent crime and second highest of murder in all of Europe. So we've had a lot of issues, and they're often concentrated in these sort of 60s neighborhoods, sort of like the banlieues of France. And so the city has these programs in these different neighborhoods that we would like to collaborate with. And this is sort of what it looks like, very typically inspired from or designed according to functionalism principles. A lot of socioeconomic problems, a lot of youth unemployment, a lot of general unemployment, separated from the main city. And so we think that this would be and there are, as I said, programs within the city of working with youth in different aspects. So what we want to do is set up a youth program or include the youth in these neighborhoods, or especially starting in Andersberg, in these paid project teams for SFFM purpose of participating or in the competition, and involving youth from maybe ages 12 to 17 in these organizations to sort of map their travel patterns and travel habits, and involve them also in producing sustainable transportation alternatives, and hopefully with inspiration from the Podcar system. And this would be done with several actors. Of course, the city, we have a planning monopoly in Sweden, which means that it's only the city that does transportation planning. But we also, in collaboration with the police and different youth organizations and different nonprofit organizations, and then Christer and I, my company's name Group Space, and then the Podcar City company to take part in and involve the youth in this competition, and sort of testing sort of last mile connections, trying it as a social infrastructure. And again, I don't need to preach to the choir about the benefits of the Podcar technology, but sort of involved youth in especially in Sweden, sort of going downhill when it comes to STEM fields, and involving kids in the STEM fields, and really setting up a program that would allow them to have power over their own mobility, get them interested in STEM fields, and taking part in the democratic process in general. And then starting small in a neighborhood like Andersberg, or even Gävle is a pretty small city, and build it iteratively into something, scale it up when needed. So that's sort of funding would be coming from the European Investment Bank, and we are applying also to different funders here in Sweden, and hopefully when we do get approved, the project will start with me and maybe some others as mentors for these kids who are already involved in the youth programs, not necessarily in transportation already, but they're different types of extracurricular activities for the children after school activities that we're hoping to engage. But we're still in the starting phases of this project, but that's sort of a brief overview of what we are planning to do here. So that's sort of briefly what we're talking about. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Henry. Appreciate it. Okay, so I suggest we continue with Magnus now, his presentation. And after that, I'd like us to have a short break for 5 minutes and then get back to the discussions. So is that okay with you, Magnus? Can you go ahead right now?
My name is Magnus Hunamar. Most of you know me, talking about a little bit about the community perspective here. And start off with what Ron was mentioned here, that the Podcar City Conference was first around in 2007. I coined the conference Podcar City in a little bit of what has been in the 20s and 30s, the push for car city. It was a lot of white books and white papers and conferences, everything, how to change the community into more car-friendly settings. So I thought Podcar City was a good name, and it back into 2005, I met a South Korean company, POSCO steel company, who was looking for a place to put up a test track of podcars. And I together with the city of Uppsala, convinced them that Uppsala is the right place to be. And it was partly because it's the weather, good snow, everything can be tested, and also that Sweden has bodies and protocols for safety certificates. So that was also appreciated by the South Korean. And during the conference, was, I was surprised. I scanned the world about who is interesting and who knows about podcasts, and I found interest in almost all directions of the world. So I found 8 different vendors, and I invited a lot of Swedish municipalities and to bring them together to see if things happened. And the outcome was that the cities were really thrilled about the technique and ideas, but also see some challenges about it. And I list the challenges here. And what we found at the conference was that no single city can do this alone. So we formed a group, a network. We called ourselves the Network Compass, and it was good 20 towns in Sweden, and it's about 10% of our inhabitants in the country under this umbrella. So in the last line, I have no support for national government, but with 10% of the people here saying we would like to go forward with these ideas, and that was a door opening into the government. And I will bring later some findings from all the studies that have been done in this 20 series later. Sometimes we think that how it looks, it have always been look like that, but it's not really true. And here's, I think it's a road in New York. So I think this graph has helped me a little bit about thinking of new paradigm. And the gray one, if I take this as the car city, and then the red one, maybe we have a new paradigm for the Podcar City in the best worlds. I don't know. But anyhow, in the early days of cars, it comes a lot of early adopters. And then you have always a gap before the community and the streets and the parking places and the bodies and millions of small things has to be done before a new mode of transport can be rolled out. So, for instance, in Sweden, we had a gap of something like 40 years 1904 to 1945 after the Second World War, before we really start to buy cars in Sweden. And then when we have this steep rollout of the 60s, as you say, Henry, that was another 15-20 years before we really created car cities here in Sweden. And here we are maybe in between here, between X and Y, because we have some early adopters in the Podcar system around the world, some system going, and in some parts of or especially in Europe, more and more towns are very tired of cars. So we should have meet the peak car situation here. And this graph was brought up in the World Economic Forum back in 1990 to say that this car-centric urban development, the car city, is not really the best. It's actually poor for business. And I looked back for the basic thoughts about economic wealth back to Adam Smith. So he talked about wealth is based on the benefits from division of labor, competition, and trade. And division of labor, if you take it into the city landscape, you have to have the inner accessibility good, and trade you have to have the outer accessibility. So the first all towns were placed by waterways or railroads and so on and so forth. But even so, this discussion of the car city problems back in 1990, it has taken some time before we change our way of building our communities. But in Paris, in 2020, Anne Hidalgo, the mayor there, said that please, Paris is for people. It's not built for cars. So when she had her second term, 1919, she wrote a program that she would like to be voted for, to say that we stop this car oriented all these cars in Paris. We clear the streets, reclaim the streets, and for instance, the main arterial in Paris, Rue de Rivoli, packed with cars before, now cleared, and roads along the River Seine now cleared, and so on. And if I look at small streets beside of this road, the Rivoli, it's actually not packed with cars. So the cars is not taking other roads. It's actually more or less disappear. And I think the big the COVID, the pandemic 2020 was a bit of a push for the Parisian to start to try to bike instead, because of the regulation of not going by metro or buses or car. And just a little note there that every street corner in Paris has now been allocated for bike parks. So they have also organized where to place your bike when you go around in Paris. And I asked, and another cities that have been bike cities for a very long time is Copenhagen, and I saw some notes that they have been asked, why do you actually take the bike every day? And it was nothing for the environment. It was just for conveniency and healthy and a fairly quick way of doing things. So what some conclusions out of this is that actually this old city centers is robust. It has been for horses and trams and for pedestrians and cars, and why not just cyclists maybe it's possible, or if it's big enough you have also subways or metro in there. But the problem with all these communities I have talked to in a network of Compass is the mid-size towns and especially the suburbs that have been built in the 60s, where you have actually built by the norms of the cars and have this functional thinking, as Henry pointed out, that you have different areas just focusing on to being a commercial area or office area or residential area or a shopping area or whatever. And there's no street network at all. It's just bubbles, just cul-de-sac, dead ends. It's very, very hard to make some sense with public transport. It's just car and so much. It's very hard for people there. They can hardly do anything without going into the car and doing things. So I just pinpoint some things that it's important to put into the program from a community side of it. That it's what. How to solve the problem of the suburbs, to heal it, to link it and service it. And service and heal, it's out of the transportation problems, but it has to be included. But in the transportation issue, I just pinpointed this, it has to be safe, convenient and reliable transits. It has to link together different districts and cross barriers, offer mobility for all, create safe and attractive local environments, offer new modes of local logistics. We have to keep the goods in mind here. Attract new lifestyles and businesses, and create acceptance for a paradigm shift. So, and also good to be good looking as just end up this presentation with some slides of how it can be like. And the first one is from Gävle, and Gävle is a fairly old town, so why not having the guideways in an old-fashioned way? And this is for a suburb out of Helsinki, the capital of Finland. It can be crossing a park, not often, which is not possible other modes of transport. And here's from the second Podcar City Conference in the University of Cornell, Ithaca. I think it's a drawing from Jacobs and his neighborhood. Here's where he lives today, and he wished to have a podcast system there, and then gradually people move over to the podcast system, leave more and more car behind, and ends up like this after a while. And talking about acceptance in youth, this is a picture where I put a podcast went to show it to a high school and people, students come on board, and we discussed how it could be to be using this kind of transport mode. That's about that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So I'll have a few slides here about our experience with students working at San Jose State on solar-powered automated transit. So I've been working with Ron Swenson for about, well, since 2012 on a vision for solar-powered automated transit. So this rendering, I think, really well captures our thinking on the way to implement pod cars. And I think one of the things that, you know, from Ron's influence primarily has been doing this with solar power. And so what you see here is the guideway, above which is a canopy of solar panels, station off in the background, also with solar. And we've done some work to see that solar could power one of these systems if you tied it to the grid on 24/7, and possibly to do it also with a net zero energy footprint. So as you all know, Podcar, you know, features offline stations so that vehicles don't have to stop if they don't want to. And so
Thank you.
there's
Technology.
Oh, geez. Okay. Thanks for your help.
lots of you know, advantages for doing transportation with
Start.
offline stations.
Thank you.
So over time, since 2012,
Thank you.
we've been working with students at San Jose State. This top left picture was where we started in 2012 with multidisciplinary student project team. We had students from mechanical engineering, computer, software engineering, business, urban planning, volunteers from local community college. And you know, there was a lot of interest from this. You know, the whole idea of pod cars, it is a very interdisciplinary kind of a engineering as well as, you know, urban planning kind of a thing. So perfect for students that love to see how what they're working on could fit into a complete society. So over time, we've had, you know, teams kind of grow. I think it's one of the larger team sizes that we had, but lots of interest over the years. And some of the things that we have been doing with the students is really trying to demonstrate the idea, to be able to show it to others of what this might look like and how it might function. So, you know, we've been iterating on sort of various scale model prototypes of, you know, the motion system, the bogie system, vehicles, and things like that, and showing it at various venues. This is from the Maker Fair that used to take place in the Bay Area. We had a system where we had actually full-scale prototype working, and so these are the kinds of things that our students have gotten involved with over time. This is another version of what we've shown at this Maker Fair. So most recently, I've been working with master's students. Those other pictures were mostly undergraduate students. And we've had some very good work by master's students. This is one where a student did basically an analysis of how to lay out guideway system with solar, starting from a Google map where you could actually plot out the path, and then it would calculate what kind of solar panel canopy you would need so that you could power the system. So that was a successful master's project. And then in addition to our own students, we were doing some things in the summers. So we had various students from certainly the US, but also Korea and France, Brazil, and some students from Sweden. So this is the work from a team from Sweden back in the summer that conceptualized what a podcar might be outside and inside. And the group of them came to us to actually build the exterior model, which was a nice thing to have to demonstrate to people what this might look like. So we have engaged with sort of the California equivalent of what Stephen runs in Alabama, the Mineta Transportation Institute, and they have sponsored our work on a couple of studies. The most recent one here was looking at the question of, could you power a real system by solar? Would that be feasible? And then also, what would it look like? How would it seem to a user? And so those two questions we looked at for a possible guideway network connecting the south part of the San Jose State campus to the north part. And that's available on the Mineta Transportation website. So that's just a brief overview of what we've been doing with students at San Jose State. And we continue to work now mostly with graduate students and still developing some of the internal mechanisms for the switching and the bogey for our idea here. And what I'd like to do is get it to a place where we're confident enough that we could scale it to full scale and then ultimately work toward a full scale demonstration system. So that's where we are right now. Thank you.
Very quickly, my name is Andres. I started a company called Futron. My mission has always been to solve the traffic problems, like everyone in this group so far. Everything I've seen is everyone's working on the same objective. And that is, how do we make mobility in cities easier? How do we make cities more livable? And how do we use solar power as far as possible to do that? So we've all been working towards the same goal, and we've had different ways of doing it. In my case, I had to tackle everything. There is no industry, so I had to look at everyone getting in this industry has to do the same things. You have to understand financiers. You have to understand technology, supply chain, politics. The cities have to buy this. Business. You have to be a good businessman, an engineer, a financier, everything, because there is no industry. So there's no one that can help you, really. And my way of going about this was to tackle all of these things, and most of all behind it, build the technology that I'm taking to market. I can't just keep on talking about it. So after many years, we've now built the technology. I can quickly show you what it looks like. So what I want to tell everyone is, and why this is important, is that in all these years that I've been working, there's no industry. We talk of an industry. We talk of podcasts, but the technology and the world has moved beyond us. Tesla is now a podcar. They talk of robo-taxis. If you look at the definition of robo-taxi and a podcar, it's exactly the same thing. And if you think the market is confused, you must see the politicians. They don't know what we're talking about. When we say podcasts, they don't know if we're talking about ropeways, ultras. Are we talking about Teslas? Are we talking about self-driving cars? And it's time that we, as an industry, start sorting it out, because no one can buy it if they don't know what it is, and if there's no standards to measure it by. So what we did was we built the system after many years. Here you can see just a short video that we created to show what it looks like. And it's a 700-meter test track that we've built in India. It's got a few vehicles running on it, and we can literally test everything there that we need, and we can take, most importantly, our clients there and take them for a ride. So the politicians know what they're talking about. When we say buy our system, they can see it, they can come there, they can take a ride in it. And it's working perfectly. So this specific unit can take 16 people, 8 sitting, 8 standing. It's got offline stations, everything you've ever seen, 8-meter turning radius, which is quite important, so that you can follow the road network, and a relatively small track. This one is our test site, still quite a big track actually, but we are now reducing that size significantly. and the technology works. That's very, very important. You can go there, you can climb in it, you can take a ride in it while we are improving the system. We've got about 40 engineers now working on it, and we are increasing the speed on a monthly basis as we work with the safety. This system is working, but I want to emphasize again to everyone in this call that everyone like myself who are commercializing the industry are working by ourselves. It feels like there's no support because we don't have financiers, we don't have politicians, we don't have definitions even for what we do. We've got a massive need. There's not a single city I've been to that doesn't say we need this yesterday. And then when you say, okay, let's get it, they say, what standards are we going to use to enforce it? Which laws will we use? How do we govern it? Does this fall under the Ministry of Railways or the Ministry of Transport or the city or city power? And then we have to try and resolve the question for them. And then they say, okay, but what is a podcar? Is it a robotaxi? Is it and then they Google it. And every single time they Google it, ultra photos pop up. And they say, oh, it's self-driving golf carts. And and then they say, okay, hang on, it's cable carts. It's cable carts and it's called ropeways. And if that confusion is not good enough, then there's this guy this Russian guy that built, or Belarusian guy that built a system now which he moved to Dubai called U-Sky. His new name is U-Sky. And that causes even more confusion because it's not an offline system. It looks like this, but it's not. Okay, long story to say, we need definitions. We need politicians to understand what we are talking about. We need cities to know what they're buying. We need an industry that know what they're supplying. We need certainty for financiers. What are they investing in? And there's nothing. There's literally nothing. So what I'm saying is, something like Podcar City, and right now Podcar City is the only one. You're the only contender for this. Someone has to come and put the politicians and the philosophers and the financiers and the technologists together and say this is our industry, and this is how we define the industry, and this is how we're going to manage the industry, and this is what any city can do when they want to implement it. And it doesn't start with the technology. We, the industry, will create the technology. Technology is not the challenge anymore. The challenge is, what do you buy? How do you buy? And how do you govern it? And how do you finance it? And how do you make money from it? And I've got a big need for that. We're doing all that by ourselves. If a Podcar City can transform into the industry midpoint where everyone goes and everyone starts working on what's really important, and that is how to make it simple to actually deal with this industry. And then you've got a massive service. You're taking a huge load off my shoulders. So yeah, that's the few things. Tomorrow I can give you a little bit more, but I just quickly wanted to say this is not theoretical anymore. It's working. We are commercializing. We've got lots and lots of cities that we have to do the planning for right now, but we have to do all of the stuff in the background that hasn't been done. Standards, governance, definitions, financial models, all of it. And hopefully some entity like Podcar City can actually take that responsibility in the industry over and make it simple for everyone to buy and to sell. Okay.
Awesome.
That's all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you very much, Andries. That's really very helpful. Setting the stage for tomorrow, where we'll talk more about industry, and also bringing to the point that one part that you and I've discussed many times is the educational component. And I believe that the companies that are successful in this will be the ones that align as well with the academic mission and bring young people who need this so much more than us going forward. And I appreciate your initiative in that regard.
We're all the pioneers. We're all the pioneers. The guys that will run this in a massive scale and deploy it are now at universities. So 100%. We are building this for the next generation. We are planting the seeds of a forest which we will never see.
Excellent. Thank you. So now,
thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Andries. So now, Christer, I believe we're going to hear from Stan Young. Is that the case?
Correct. Yes. Please go ahead, Stan, and I look forward to listen to you.
Thanks, everyone. Let's see if I can share a presentation that I have prepared. Yeah, this is a presentation I put together for the International Roadway Federation, a presentation in December of 2025. It's two months out of date, but most of the insights are still fresh. It's going to go through that. It's notice that we were renamed the National Laboratory of the Rockies, formerly National Renewable Energy Laboratories. A lot of our work is getting highly scrutinized these days, so it takes a while to get things approved. So this is fully approved, ready to share, and I'll verbally catch you up if anything's out of date. A lot of this concentrates on the recent robotaxi craze, but reflects heavily in general on any type of automated mobility. The current status of AV robotaxi deployment, we're seeing growth rates that usually are associated with dot-coms or Silicon Valleys and things like that. I'm going to go over that a little bit. Really, this drills into the safety review, crash statistics to date, and some of the things that we're seeing in this AV space related to robotaxis, which I think are transferable to almost any form of automation, nothing there. And then looking at scaling. Right now, the scaling is in the robotaxi sector, but the automation of vehicles in general is going pretty great guns as far as investment and moving forward. I know we concentrate on ATNs a lot, and in dense areas, AVs don't bring a whole lot of productivity because you're vying for very limited space, but it doesn't take society long to say, hey, we can put this automated vehicles or automated platforms on their own dedicated guideway, and then we can start solving some of the congestion in the dense urban areas, various things like that. We do a lot of research into automated mobility, not so much creating it, not the automated driving systems, but all the subsystems and all the impacts. Anything in bold here, I could probably bring up a PowerPoint deck and start chatting with you on some of the things going on in there. But we're going to look at safety today. Robotaxi deployments, these are people who've actually pulled the safety drivers. You can go somewhere in this world, jump in it, and experience it as of December 2025. Google is the worldwide leader, and a good second is Baidu Apollo out of China. Those two combined probably control 80% of the market. Amazon Zoox just recently started some rides in Las Vegas, just right out the door. Pony and WeRide, both of them are strong overseas that are getting some traction. And Tesla moved above the line since this was put together. You can go to Austin, Texas, and if patient enough, capture a non-attended Tesla full self-driving robotaxi. Everyone else that I'm aware of underneath that line, sometimes it's hard to get to the truth because you're reading sales literature, but if I can confirm that somewhere in the world you can go there and actually experience this without a safety driver, it makes it. Here's another look at that. We won't go into that today. It's more of that. As far as how much service is being provided, Waymo's numbers are the most public. Occasionally you get a number from another manufacturer, particularly Baidu, usually 3 to 6 months behind. But if you take in general what Waymo has made public and double it, you're about where the industry at as a whole collectively. Waymo is responsible for about 50% of all mileage out there, or trips or whatever, and then you sum up everyone else combined and they make up the other 50%. You can see towards mid-2025, there are 250,000 trips per week, 10 million trips total. I'm going to jump forward one. The new graph on this, in fact, I'm going to jump forward two. This is kind of to bring you up to date where we're at in this world. There is another data point on here. It is as of December 2025. They hit 450,000 trips per week, and they got on the news report and said we're going to be shooting for 1 million trips per week as of end of 2026. And they look on their way to doing this. They had a $16 billion investment, and everyone else who is their competition is also moving forward with this. Don't get too excited here. Why? Because even at 1 million trips per week or 2 million trips per week, if you count the whole industry, you're still a drop in the bucket. 3.2 million trips per day just on the New York City subway, 2 million U.S. airline trips per day. Overall in the U.S., 1.1 billion trips per day in the automobiles. Probably the nearest term one is Uber Lyft rides in the US that are 20 million per day. So even if they hit a million a week, they're still a far cry from even the Uber and Lyft rides per day. So you give you an idea, we're in the infancy. This is where they plan to be if everything succeeds as planned. Over 20 US cities. By the end of 2026, you'll be able to go get a robo-taxi without a safety driver. Nothing's happened to disrupt the plans so far. And in fact, if anything, they're accelerating from what we're seeing. Overseas, there's more. I mentioned London, Tokyo, but Middle East, there's quite a few as well. Trying to get this over to safety. I got to keep moving where all my pictures here. The key to safety is getting 100 million miles. Why? Because if you take a look at the vehicle safety stats, they're all in 100 million miles. Where are we at? Cars typically, approximately, there's 2 fatalities for every 100 million miles driven, a little bit less right now. Historically, that's been as high as 13, 14 back in the 30s. We got it down to 3 to 4 back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and now we keep making it safer, but we're marginally improving it. Under two deaths per 100 million miles traveled. But where are we at? This kind of goes into some other of the competitors. I want to skip over that because I want to put the emphasis on where we're at with safety. You're welcome to the slide deck. I can point you to where it is. Another important phenomenon going in that doesn't get a lot of press is this whole, we call it on-demand transit. Sometimes it's called microtransit. Sometimes it's called on-demand mobility, but it's adopting the Uber and Lyft business model for transit. It is spreading across the entire US. I just heard at the AVs for Public Transit that Atlanta is going metro-wide with it. Dallas-Fort Worth has already done it. It's more or less for first, last mile and community circulation. You have a fleet of minivans, sometimes cutaways, that looks very much like an Uber Lyft app, but sharing is compulsory. Then they reserve the buses and the light rail and the trains for interregional. Just look at those growth rates. Those are not to be ignored. The other thing about on-demand transit, this is the first place where automation and public transit are just beginning to come together. You can go out to Chandler, Arizona, and when they're out of capacity with their normal fleet of manned minivans, they'll offer you can take the ride on a Waymo. So we see this somewhere to watch. It's still incredibly just in its infancy, but it's a first pace that what we normally see as public transit begins to overlap in some of the robo-taxi world. Amazon Zoox made it out the door mid last year. I was lucky enough to be in Las Vegas for another event, and I got to ride it. Very much similar to many of the others, with a little bit difference. You notice this vehicle is custom designed more for the idea of more than one person riding, where everyone else in the industry is pretty much into a single party ride concept. Getting into safety, this is where it starts getting interesting. We did a little sentiment analysis, sentiment, where we used AI tools to scour the internet, look at the attitudes towards these new technologies as they came out. And the fun thing is safety came out, whether it was a positive, whether it was a negative, whether it was Waymo, or whether it was Tesla. Safety was in the top 5 issues. This is kind of fun to look at, to compare, contrast Waymo and Tesla. But the fact is there's a level of public acceptance. There was another survey out that people's attitude towards these automated vehicles, these robotaxis, changed substantially once they experience it. Harken back to the last presentation, it's very important to have somewhere for someone to go and experience it. And I think that's why you see they're trying to get out there geographically to get more exposure to the general public and judge what the acceptance is. Waymo safety stats. Sometimes this is, I don't know, reviewed harshly, but it's the only thing we got. Safety, Waymo puts it out more than most. Every robotaxi company is required to report. So you can go through these. I won't go through them individually. The most important one is coming out mid 2025, so it is about 6 months dated. At that point, Waymo just eclipsed the 100 million miles, 120 or 140 and change, something like that. And so they were getting in the realm of statistical significance. So they wrote up this report and put it through the academic review and had a partner do it. And they more or less said, after 140 million miles, if you just take a look at the accident statistics, we're close to being 10 times safer, or a 90% reduction in crashes. Sometimes it's 80%, sometimes it's 95%, depending on the scenario, but they are delivering on what they promised. Yes, debatable why, because it's all self-reported, but then again, it is of the industry data I have worked with, some of the more transparent. I'm not saying fully transparent, but we expect probably something first quarter of 2026 to see a refresh of this. They do put out a periodic updates on their website. So this means all sorts of track crashes, serious airbag deploys, injury crashes, as well as pedestrian, bicyclist, and any other micromobility. There's even speculation out there. It's pretty much speculation that the ones they are involved with, for the large part, they are not at fault. But that's speculation. We're waiting for a completely independent review. Might get that in 2026, moving into 2027, as the full mileage begins to accumulate. The only type of crash to increase in frequency is rear end collisions. Why? It's if Waymo's in front and the trailing vehicle, these automated vehicles in general, tends to hit the brakes a little bit faster than most people. And so if anything, the trailing vehicle will rear end a Waymo vehicle in an emergency situation. And that's been observed in the data as well. Baidu is reporting similar stuff coming out of China, 10 times safer. I can't get to the granular statistics, so these are just screen scrapes from news bulletins they put out. There's a lot of caveats in this. This is still early on. We're just getting into statistical significance. Even when this was written, Waymo and the whole industry were not traveling at speed, meaning they stuck to arterials less than 45 miles an hour. We're starting to see some of these begin to get on roadways that are above that. Again, all the deployments are pretty much in the Sun Belt, don't have to deal with snow and ice, various things like that. But I can't sum it up. It's encouraging. Is it definitive? No, but it is encouraging. AV scaling and the resulting safety impacts. This is what I keep going over these numbers again and again to make sure we don't get them wrong, because they're pretty significant. Note, this is on a log scale, the mileage log scale here on the left in the year, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. Doubling periods that you're seeing for exponential growth. We can validate doubling periods anywhere 3 months to 9 months. If you look at the projections from industry, they are projecting doubling periods in the 6 to 9 month period as far as either number of vehicles on the road, trips provided, or mileage driven. We get a glimpse and an update on this about quarterly. We're due for another one soon to see if they're on track. So if you're into exponential growth rates and stuff and think about doubling periods, we're early on in this. They're able to scale. And this is just Waymo's growth rate. This can be seen across all their competitors as well. We do this little model about takeoff, early adopters, things like that. Well, we're very much in the early stage. We're not even at 1%. So this is nearing its max growth rate, and we're watching it closely to see when the growth begins to slow, because once you get a shape of the growth, you can begin to estimate various parameters of adoption. The safety baseline, again, is a little over 1.26 deaths per 100 million miles, down from 1.34. That's generally between 1 and 2 deaths per 100 million miles these days, and the various other accident rates. If you take that and the growth rates and begin to combine them, when will automation in general? Now, it has to go well beyond robotaxis, because the robotaxi business model can only hit a certain extent, but at some point it's going to hit your personal automobile. Hopefully you'll take a fleet of these and turn them into dedicated ATN systems for medical centers, airports, various things like that. If you can sustain these doubling rates 6 months, it'll be even into 2030 before they impact the safety at a large scale. If you're at a 12-month doubling rate into mid 2030s, approaching 2040s. If it slows down to an 18-month doubling rate, it even pushes it out to 2040s and beyond. So the story here is very encouraging, very fast growth rates. We are so car dominant that even if they continue to double every 6 months, it's still at the end of the decade before we start seeing some significant changes in the overall number of deaths and injuries that we accumulate on our roadways. I'm going to skip that. More caveats there. I think that pretty much sums it up. I would like to combine a couple of these. My most recent one was talking about the economic and employment. And of course, you hear a lot of news stories about Uber and Lyft drivers going, losing their jobs or being impacted. There's a lot of things they don't tell you. One is Uber and Lyft and ride hailing itself is growing at a 20% year-over-year growth rate. So the increase in the amount of trips just in ride hailing itself, even though it's growing slower, is, it's starting from a much bigger number, is still outpacing what AVs are bringing to the table. And the other thing is, if you're worried about Uber and Lyft drivers losing their jobs, most likely we will lose more jobs to what we call the crash economy. If we can cut those fundamental crash rates in half, all the parts of the economy, the medical, the emergency response, the repair business and everything like that will lose as many, if not more jobs due to increase in safety. Oh, well, some things to think about. I'll stop sharing this and see if you have any questions.
Thank you, Stan. That's very interesting. And for my personal comment is that all that data that's been aggregated over years is very beneficial. What we are doing in automated transit networks or Podcar systems. It's very nice data to be used for future research and analysis of large-scale systems. So thank you for that, Stan. It's very valuable.
I want to tip my hat to Peter Muller. He was one of the first to start bringing some of the safety stats together for the Morgantown system after it's been running 30 years. And he goes, guys, we're not at 100 million miles there by any means, but the safety record of the Morgantown system for what it has delivered was impeccable. And that started putting me on the trail of a lot of these safety stats numbers.
Well, Stan,
Stephen, sorry for interrupting you.
No, not at all. Stan, you're right. And there have been 200 million rides. So I think whether you get in your car to go a mile or 10 miles, for every ride, that's a phenomenal statistic. No deaths after 200 million rides. I just would like to say, though, that the current system, there are 150 people who die every hour. Since we've started, we've lost an airplane full of, equivalent passengers, of a jumbo jet even during the course of this meeting, who have passed away because our system is inherently unsafe. So that's what we're up against.
Thanks, Ron. Stephen,
Yeah.
you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, interesting you saying about the economic impact, Stan. In a place like Alabama, there are already people talking about how, in addition to the specific crash economy workers you're talking about, how it's going to negatively impact rural hospitals, because in a weird way, rural hospitals sort of depend on car crashes for revenue.
I remember you mentioning that, and I tried to chase some stats for it, Stephen, and the best I got was about 5% for hospitals, and I couldn't push it any further because, that rural aspect and the aspect that those are bills that get paid by an insurance company, not bills that don't get paid. AI couldn't handle it after that. So there's probably a story there, but someone needs to dig into it a little deeper and get it clarified. So.
Yeah, I'll reach out to that came from a guy here that runs a research institute into the insurance industry. So I'll tag him. Hey, Krister, if you don't mind, as we transition to the next speaker, you mind if I do the introduction just because
please do. I was just
guys.
about to say that. Steve. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. All right. So as we round out this session, again, I appreciate everybody being here. And and again, the purpose of this is I mean, we're sharing ideas. A lot of us are, have had similar conversations with this, but reinforcing the ideas, reinforcing the relationships and the collaboration and expanding those where we can. So, Christopher's from Sweden. He's here in Alabama. I mentioned earlier about a project that we did in Sweden. So I'm going to have Javier Pina Bastidas, who's one of our PhD students here, who actually did that work, looking at robo-taxis and how they might augment public transport services in Uppsala, Sweden. And again, what's interesting is when we did the work there, we were given very, very explicit commentary, direction, if you will, from the municipality in Uppsala. They said, look, we are not interested in a situation where robo-taxis or shared autonomous vehicles compete with our public transportation. Also on the project team was an anthropologist, social scientist who specialized in mobilities of care. So, getting, elderly people, disabled, and I mentioned before, parents of young children. So that sort of informed this, again, very human focused story. And so I suppose as Javier goes through this, we can all sort of envision and imagine how a Podcar system might do something similar to this and augment the overall larger transportation system. So with that, Javier, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction. I also would like to thank you, my other co-author, Dr. Yun Liu. And this project is called Expanding the Boundaries of Transit-Oriented Development with New Mobility Hubs. So, as Dr. Jones mentioned, we learned that in Sweden, there is a big trend, or there has been a big discussion about mobility hubs. So even the definition on the mobility hubs is not already complete. It has many forms, and the only thing is, like, I don't know what is exactly a mobility hub, but I know that I am seeing one. I can see one. I know one when I see it. So I don't know what is a mobility hub, but I know that it is a mobility hub when I see it. So in this specific project, we are talking about mobility hubs in the suburbs of the cities, not the ones that are included in the city center. And in this case, in Sweden, in Uppsala more specifically, there are some specific mobility hubs that are trying to get some amenities closer. So while people are waiting for transportation, they might also do grocery shopping, or even have a coffee and even park their cars. So this is the idea. And so in this regard, the idea is to provide more opportunities for people that are not in the mainstream mobility system. It is from home to work, to have other options to move around and also stay on some places instead of a bus stop that sometimes is not the most friendly location. So the main goal was to generate a simulation on how a system of autonomous vehicles could provide mobility to these mobility hubs in a suburban area. And for that, we selected the city of Uppsala, which is not Stockholm. And then inside the city, there is one suburb in the south that is a perfect case study for the development of these technologies. So we can see that the study area has just outside one IKEA shopping center, which is also one of the main points of travel for that population. And then inside the study area, we have three main cores. The first one is okay. Yeah. So the first one is on the west, a neighborhood called Kutsunda. Then in the middle, we have the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. And then on the east, we have the Bergsbrunna neighborhood. Those are the three main cores of population. And to start with our study, we basically understood what are the characteristics of this area. Basically, in here, with open data, we can understand what was the geographical distribution of residential locations, and we can see on the left the low-income residential houses, or the lower-income residential houses are located on the west center of the map, but the higher income are towards the north and south of the study area. And those squares are called ruta segmentation or zoning. So we access information in that type of format. We also studied the sociodemographic in the area. We could understand that around 22% of the population lives in there, and most of the jobs are concentrated on the CBD in the city center, north of our study area and outside. So as expected, most of the trips are going towards the city center. So only 3.4% of the trips are made inside. And then all other travel demand is happening either going from inside to outside or totally outside of the study area. And then for the inhabitants in there, we could identify that there is it is not balanced, the proportion of drivers in the area. So men tend to have a bigger proportion of access to car, whereas women, we identify that they use mainly bicycles and public transportation. So all of this in understanding the mobility, the characteristics, and how we are going to approach later our simulation. We did a very in-depth study and understanding how different segments of the population move. So, as mentioned, employed people usually start their trips from the high-income areas, go to the city center, mainly as drivers, whereas, for example, students, they will usually start their trips close to the university and go to the university and the city center as well, but using public transportation and bicycle. And for example, for another segment that is retired people, they are going from the high income areas to the city center and surprisingly IKEA. So they are using the car as driver as the main mode as well. So all of that information fits into an agent-based framework for simulation. So for create this simulation, we need first road network, which was obtained from OpenStreetMap. And then all that information that I just commented is combined and to make a mobility synthetic data. So that's the other component that inputs into the agent-based simulator. So for creating the synthetic trip data, basically the idea is we don't have information at disaggregated level, but we can use some methodologies to create or recreate a population at the disaggregated level that resembles the same distributions as the aggregated information we had. So for that, we created different steps, starting from defining who are the people that live there and where they live, then what they are going to do during the day, and finally when. So all those steps are comprised in our methodology. I don't going to give details, but happy to answer any questions later. And then when we have created the synthetic population, we also have an in-house agent-based simulator that is going to basically control the fleet running in the area. And that simulator is an algorithm that has optimizers for example, ride sharing. If we want to make groups of travelers, group them in the most optimal way. But one of the important parameters here for this simulator is the critical waiting time. So we set this parameter manually, and we can say, for example, the maximum waiting time is 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or any other value that we wish. So the simulation is going to behave differently depending on that value. So starting with the result, here we can see how the aggregated level information that we got at the rural level was then distributed at building level. So in this case, we are seeing the buildings that were labeled as low income on the left, and then the high income on the right, some buildings, and the population is distributed on those specific locations. And then we created a number of hubs that were basically coming from the locations on the bus stations. So the idea was that no single hub will be closer than 1 kilometer away. So the idea is to have a coverage of at least 1 kilometer area per hub. And then with the disaggregated population and understanding the patterns they have for traveling, we created two scenarios. The first one is very limited, just trips from the mobility hubs to the residential places or the other way. It is called transportation feeder service. And then the second scenario was a more comprehensive one in which the vehicles are going to work as taxis. So they will move all over the area, making trips inside the study area and only leaving to the IKEA shopping center. As I mentioned, it is one of the popular destinations outside there. So in this scenario, the idea is to support the mobility inside the neighborhood and provide also access to these mobility hubs. So the simulation parameters for the first scenario, we got around 6,000 trip requests during the day. Then if we expand to the second scenario, the taxi service, we will have an additional 9,000 trips, in total 15,000 trips on this simulation. And then we created two different types of operation. The first one is called normal operation, in which the maximum waiting time for everyone is 16 minutes. And then we created another way or another type of operation, what is called priority operation, with 8 minutes for mobilities of care-related trips. In this case, we assume, or we have also, based on the literature, identified that women and people over 60 years of age or older are usually related or more probably doing mobilities of care trips. Then for those individuals, the maximum waiting time was 8 minutes, and for the others, 16 minutes. So under these conditions, we created our simulations, and here we can find the results. So for the last mile travel demand, only going to the mobility hubs, the required fleet size is going to be 34 vehicles if we only get the normal operation. But if we prioritize some users, we will need to increase the fleet to 41. And then if we run the full scenario with the last mile plus the taxi travel inside the study area, we will need 129 vehicles. And if we prioritize some users, it is going to increase to 187 vehicles. So in the second scenario, the increase is bigger, given that also the trips are longer. And that help us understand also what is the additional investment the operators should consider if they want to prioritize a group of the users. So another set of indicators about the performance of the fleet, we can see that the percentage time the vehicle is occupied is very low. Let's say in the last mile scenario, only 45% in average a vehicle is engaged. but if we include the taxi service, that occupation time is going to increase to 62%, because the trips are longer. But then we can see that the trips per vehicle drop in the scenario with the taxi operation, because of course the trips are longer. So it also gives us an idea on how we want to operate it. If we want to charge per trip or per miles traveled. Um, all of this is just information. We are not making any decision, but we can see the potential of the simulator in here. And finally, what are the performance indicators for the passengers? So in this case, if we consider the transportation constraint group or the mobilities of care group, we can see that giving priority to them in both scenarios will reduce the waiting time dramatically. So, for example, in the normal operation, it was 6 minutes for every, for on average for a passenger, but then it went down to 2 minutes, approximately 2 minutes. But what was interesting to us is that the decrease also affected the other group. So the other group still have a higher waiting time, but it also decreased when the priority operation is implemented. So in this case, what is happening is trying to make the system better for some users, it will benefit others. Or we will need to include other rules into the simulation so the waiting time for others does not reduce, is not reduced, but only the mobilities of care group are being on this group. But that's for future work. Another final remark here in this table is the total travel time when including the taxi service is going to increase from 8 minutes to 11 or almost 12 minutes on average. So those are all indicators that are very meaningful for the operation. If we want to include more vehicles or not, the waiting time and the cost for this type of service. Finally, here are some graphs on what is going on when we increase or when we have the priority operation. What happened is that all waiting times shift, not only for the mobilities of care group, but for the traditional as well. So that's just another way to see what I just mentioned. And yeah, I would like to conclude here saying this methodology allows us to get basic picture on what could be the operational configuration of a fleet of vehicles running on the suburbs of city as Uppsala. So another a set of acknowledgements to our members in the group, Sophie Menner, Xiao Xu, and Jackie Kong, who actually programmed the agent-based simulator. And with that, I would like to conclude and open the floor for questions.
Thank you, Javier. And while I think we timed this perfectly, this morning session was supposed to end at 11:30, and then and Javier just wrapped it up. But what I wanted to say before, and obviously happy to stay in for questions, but one of the reasons that I wanted to have Javier present this and to get this before this group is, you know, we have what we want to do is figure out a way, can we take these models that we've built, and instead of having robo-taxis and other things, can we use this type of analysis to help with you know, tell the Podcar story, right? Create scenarios, look at different different situations. I think one of the interesting things is when Javier was talking about these the agent-based simulation. So we're talking about synthetic populations, and when in some of the U.S. examples, when we've been able to tie these synthetic populations back to actual surveys where we've gone out and we've surveyed people, you know, would you use this? Would you ride this? How long would you wait? And we tie that back to demographic information, income, all the different things. And if we can geolocate that against census data, then we can make approximations of where the types of people who would use the technology actually live in a real area, so we can make the situations more spatially realistic rather than just completely, sort of sim city open-ended hypothetical situations. We can tie it back to a much more socio-spatial reality. So that's one of the things, as we continue having some conversations with Krister and Ron, certainly, here, in person while they're here. That's one of the things I would be interested in is to explore if and how we could help the Podcar City community with some of this analysis. So, Mark.
Thank you. And that was very interesting, Javier. For now, we actually end of this meeting today. However,
Hey,
I don't want to close it.
Krister, just
Yeah,
real
sorry.
quickly, Mark Lee had a question.
Okay, go ahead, dear, please.
Thank you for your presentation, Javier. It was really interesting with the synthetic modeling there. I was just wondering if we could add a new component to it, and that is fares versus generation of a system, how it generates funding to attract investors from a public financing, private partnership. I think we need to put some numbers around it to make it attractive for investing. Okay. And need to look at the finances, the financial component. That's all. Thank you very much.
Good point. Good point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the comment. I only can add that we have the vehicle miles traveled, and with that, I guess we can start thinking about cost.
Very good.
We will discuss financing tomorrow at the same time. So, there will be, unfortunately, we cannot use Elisa Fermender's presentation. So I have to take care of it together with Ron. But we will be some discussions about financing. It's an important part of our work, of course. I also want to mention, we were talking about Uppsala. Just 2 days ago, there was an article in Uppsala main paper about the idea to put in a podcast system there again. And it's pitched against the light rail project they started on already. I'm not sure. Magnus, are you here?
Yes, he's still here.
Magnus? Yeah. Do you have that article? I don't have it here. Do you have that article? Maybe you can share if you can find it.
I have it only on my mobile, sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry. Anyway, but that's a very interesting, very interesting article. Just a few days ago, they're saying that we can do much better with the new technology than using an old light rail system. So everybody knows there's nothing light about the light rails. It's tons, but still. Anyway, so yeah.
If I recall it's roughly the podcast system was 3 times cheaper and cover 3 times bigger area.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So, Krister, I would suggest that we have a few people from quite a distance that are, perhaps coming again this evening, our time, and tomorrow morning in Southeast Asia. So I would think that while technically our meeting is supposed to end 5 minutes ago, for those of you who would like to say hello and share a little bit of your insights very briefly, I would like to welcome that. And then those of you who have, scheduling conflicts, please feel free to take off. By the way, we still have most of the people. There were a few who had other commitments, and through private messages and the general chat, I've seen this as we've gone forward. So to begin, those of you who are in Europe or in Asia and have the time constraint and have not spoken before, please chime in, introduce yourselves, and then we'll move to the Western Hemisphere for any others that would like to say hello. And then we'll wrap this up in a few minutes.
Please go ahead. And I saw that you raised your hand, Douglas, but wait to see. Maybe someone else want to speak first. Mark, you want to say something again?
Well, I think
Mark Lee?
Steve Hamilton is unmuted.
Oh,
so
Steve. Yeah,
looks
Steven,
like
please
you
go
have
ahead.
something to say, Steve.
Yeah, I was looking for the raise your hand button and couldn't find it.
Oh, no worries. I saw that you weren't muted, so that's a good cue, as good as any.
Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Hamilton. I guess I was a member of the Podcar community for many years and have moved on to greener pastures recently. I guess I wanted to underline the comment that Mark made. And I guess there were a bunch of comments made in the very entry remarks from Krister and from Stephen. And I'll pick up on what Krister said about wanting to make people's lives better, in particular transportation better. And I think the perhaps not fully or completely enough answered question is, what does better mean? Better can be in a lot of different dimensions, and I think you've got to figure out what is a set of dimensions we all agree on, and that the solution we offer has to be better, quantitatively, measurably better in those terms. I think we've heard a couple people mention some ideas in the presentations tonight, and I think Mark really put his finger on a really critical one. We haven't talked about cost at all, and the cost to society of a trip matters. You want to know why we have a car-dominated culture, especially in America, but even more increasingly around the world? It's because it's the cheapest way to get it done. All the public transit solutions that we've got, I mean, I only know the numbers that I ran in the analysis I did at various places in the States. A car trip costs you maybe 85 cents a mile. A public transit trip costs you $4.80. Guess what? People are going to take the cheaper solution. So one of the metrics of better has to be cost to society. I'm not talking about price, because you can manipulate price with subsidy, right? Cost. And that comes right back to this last comments that Stephen made. You have to include in your trip analysis, you have to include demographic information. The fallacy that is done all throughout public transit in America is they come up with the ridership estimates that are complete fantasies, right? No correlation to reality whatsoever. If I don't have people in a neighborhood, they're not going to initiate trips from that neighborhood. If you know how many people there are and you have some idea of what kinds of people there are, you can guesstimate how many trips total get taken. Now you got to argue about what share of those am I going to get. The system that I'm proposing has to be built and affordable within those constraints. Now, we don't currently plan that way in America, right? And you hear all these arguments about all the benefits to society for having, public transit. And that's because it's not affordable. They know they're going to have to be subsidizing it forever. And they keep trying to make various convoluted arguments for why we should continue subsidizing it. And the subsidies keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That's going to break at some point, right? It's breaking now, actually. So I think you've got to look at the practical realities of moving people. Yes, we want to make it as convenient. Yes, we want to make it as fast and all kinds of things. But you also got to look at what it costs and whether that's a good investment for society to make relative to other options. And if you can't make an argument that my solution is better than the other options, don't expect it to be successful. Because in the end, people will do what's economically affordable. In the meantime, you can get somebody else to pay your bill, but sooner or later, that's gonna run out.
Thank you, Steve. I just want to make clear that we have actually, we call it the 10 Commandments. It's a list of criteria to define what better means. It's not done in stone, but it's written in stone. But it's definitely an effort to do exactly what you're asking for. And I'll send you the link. Good. For you, for everyone to have a look at those criteria that we are suggesting. So just a second. There, I put it in the chat here. Just a second. Oh, where's the chat?
I think we also need to be I'm speaking for American culture. At some point in time, we just need to be honest with ourselves and each other about the true cost of the automobile.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, the number of times, I've personally been involved in studies where, they gin up this cost of, saving, adding traffic lanes on a major roadway because it's increasing productivity because there's less time spent in delay in traffic. That in no way translates to increased productivity, but we've been living with that lie and spending billions of dollars on it for my entire lifetime. And so in the car alternative community rather, we've either got to fight that lie or come up with a good one of our own. So,
Well, it's unfortunate. I think I don't believe we have a technology problem. I think we have an organizational problem. I certainly beat my head against it for a decade and failed in America. My focus was particularly America. I know much less about the rest of the world, but I get hints at least of very similar problems elsewhere. The planning is done by governments. It's done centralized, and so of course they want big solutions in big cities. And that's like, building mass transit is like building a building starting on the third floor. If you have no way to move people around at the smaller, more local neighborhoods, then you've got no connections for the long trips, and it never works out. So unfortunately, the real dynamics of an organic solution comes from the bottom up, but all the planning comes from the top down, and never the twain shall meet.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think just from a systems engineering standpoint, we were talking about this with Ron and Chris yesterday. I mean, and I don't think this is a uniquely American thing, but there, more than one thing can happen at once. But I mean, there's either you're either trying to kill the car and do away complete with the car and force everybody to ride pod cars or buses, but you can have a system of systems. And when you start looking at the incremental costs, I mean, building a pod car system over here in this part of the city as opposed to expanding the lanes or whatever. If we think about it as a more holistic, and I'm saying that, I mean, our transportation community does not do a good job of that. And I think that speaks to your point, Steve, because ultimately our transportation community is beholden to the policymaking community because that's where the decision making happens. And it's very, very seldom long-term decision making.
Well, the last point, I think that's not the way I view it. I view it as, in America at least, the transportation planning process has been completely captured by the mass transit industry. And so we'll never get any solution other than mass transit that's publicly funded anyway. And so I get some hint of that other places in the world. So I am a fan of it has to be privately fundable, which means it has to be profitable. And I think that's the only way it has a real chance of happening many places in the world.
Here, here. I'm with you there.
Mark Lee, you just wanted to say something.
I agree. There's a middle path here, though. We do have opportunity cost and environmental issues that we have to contend with. And with global warming directly related to industrial waste and fossil fuel use, we are definitely cannot continue building highways massively 5-8 lanes like we did in San Diego. Here we're fighting this right now, and we lost it actually in Santa Cruz County in California. They continually go to the car is the ultimate method for transportation. They just continuously want to widen freeways and put in the expensive bridges, overpasses, or rail lines that are not economic at all. I mean, it's something we have to really look at seriously. There's long-term effects. It's not short-term profitability. We have to look at the societal as well as the environmental impacts for long-term transportation planning. I like the Podcar system because it elevates above transportation routes and takes cars out of the center city and actually gives alternatives. If we can lower the cost, so it's more with fares and generate income from it, then it makes a lot of sense. The lighter the systems, the more efficient, the more on-demand transportation systems provides economic employment. It provides amazing environmental benefits. So it's a systems approach. You're right, but there is a middle way, and I don't think it's all due. We can't completely rely on ground transportation based on automobiles. We can't continue this, right? Unless we change our fuel sources.
100%. Coming back to what I was saying a little bit ago, there's still a few people from Europe and Africa and Asia, in fact, who haven't spoken yet. And I'd like to have any of you who would like to just say a word to pipe up and have a word. There's Sharif, Gift, and Grace. Let's see, we just lost, oh wait, you might still be here. Oh yeah, Izette is still here too. Any of you like to, yeah. How do you pronounce your name? Is it Gift or Gift? Please speak up.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I will say good morning. It's a good evening here in Ghana. And yes, my name is Gift Dumada. I am at a university in Kumasi called Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, Ghana. I have been enjoying the talk with the insights from the system approach and also from especially the idea of costs. I will say from Ghana, which has a similar transportation issue with a lot of other sub-Saharan African countries, we are also at a stage in terms of funding public transport, which in many ways, we have experimented with, government funding these systems where government has not been able to do that, and we have a private sector which has stepped in, but that private sector has also been quite chaotic. So the costs part, it's very critical because we have on one side government that is unable to provide or to be able to provide our cost to run the system, and then the government sector and then the private sector that is able to do some of that work, but there are issues with quality, reliability, and there's also a cost part to it. So it's very interesting with some of the ideas or some of the discussions coming up with the idea of cost, because I think for us as well, that is a big a challenge, because government cannot continue to fund public transport. It's just not sustainable. And finding ways that private sector can be able to support it, but also in a way that has enough capacity to provide a service to different communities is an ongoing challenge for our society, especially here in Ghana. So that's what I want to add for the discussion right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Gift. I really appreciate it. I want to reiterate that we're going to have a discussion about financing tomorrow, but we will speak to that. But thank you. Anyone else, please? Okay. Since we don't have, let's give the floor for anyone to comment right now. So please go ahead.
Douglas, earlier you had your hand up. Did you want to add something to your earlier remarks?
Oh yeah. I wanted to ask Dr. Farman about the program at San Jose State. So because I noticed that you've had quite a number of students who have come in and out. So question is, how have you managed to keep pace of the continuity? For example, you get a new set of students and you've worked to a certain level. Like right now, you say that you are with the masters, the graduate students. So how are you managing to be able to keep tight of that? And if so, if you can, any of the major challenges that you face when you're trying to work out this program? Yeah.
Well, one of the
Yes, very, very.
challenges that Professor Furman has is that he left the session a little bit ago for going to class with his students. He's has right now he's with his classmates. But since I've worked with him all this time, I'll be happy. Oh, there you are. You're back again.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question, Douglas, and a challenging one. I would say many of the semester to, well, year to year, because it's a 2-semester program, we have had trouble with continuity. And, partly doing this with students, they're learning, we want them to be creative and not just give them a tightly specified design this more.
Yeah.
We'd like to give them more open-ended. So in that case, what happens is, we'll get certainly creative solutions, but maybe doesn't keep us moving in the same direction from year to year. So we've experienced that. For what we've done as far as demonstration models and getting it out to the public, I think it's worked well. It does attract interest from younger students, and there was some talks about the STEM education, and I think there's really good ways to stimulate that kind of interest. And so yeah, that continuity is important. I think if you're working on in a well-defined problem area, I think it's possible to continue progress, but you need to specify it well and sort of guide it continually. So I think it is possible, and maybe depending on what you're working on. I mean, we've had to iterate a lot on how we're doing the guiding of the bogey and switching in the guideway. And that's a very difficult problem when you're suspended from the guideway. Much easier problem if you're steering wheels like a golf cart, in a supported, underneath system. So we've been really struggling with that problem, but we think we have a solid concept now that we can scale. So we're trying to leverage a little bit more of the expertise of the master's students to push that along. So hope that maybe helps. Ron,
Yeah,
did you have anything to put on that?
I'd just like to make one other comment, and you just mentioned, Buff, that it's a work in progress, and we have left behind for now the undergraduate program, and part of the difficulty, as he just explained, was having continuity, and the level of sophistication of the undergrads is not such that they can really pick up where somebody left off the previous time. And so a lot of things have been repeated such that we've never been, in some aspects, some components of the system, we've not been able to get to the finish line. However, I think one of the key elements here is we've had a couple of professionals working alongside the students who've helped to advance this. And so as we would work with you all in other countries to build a program for continuity, such as in Ghana or in Bangladesh, Turkey, we would definitely bring a lot of experience to the table, and as much as anything, help you know what not to do. And there's really, in other words, 2 or 3 key elements. One is that students come and go, but a professor like Buff can hold that torch, you might say, keep passing the torch to the next generation of students very effectively. And again, grad students helps. The other element is to have some kind of industry support where there's somebody in the game locally, whether they are building components or building assembled system or building, as you saw earlier from Andres Lowe, the actual test tracks or full-scale implementations. There's where a private industry element or group or assembler can keep the students involved. In fact, Steve Jones just showed us around yesterday here at this facility. And one of the things they have is right across the hall, as it were, on another floor here in the building, there's a government agency which is inhabiting the same complex here, same building. And that's a huge advantage for students because they can take on a student project and matriculate into an internship. And in fact, there are some employment from the student side of this building over to the government transportation unit in a region of the state. So these are things that'll come into play.
So I've got one other comment I guess I would like to make along the lines of the organizational challenges. And I guess I'm hoping that, again, my experience is in America. So if I described it there, I'm hoping that those international members can see the opportunities that they have to try to solve it where we haven't. So I worked in a private industry in electronics for most of my career. And every project I ever worked on, there was a particular role, product architect. And that's an interesting role because it's the glue that holds things together. It's the keeper of the vision. On the one side, you've got the C-suite, the guys that are going to provide the money, right? And they expect some rate of return. On the other hand, you've got your marketing department. They understand your customers. What does the market look like and what is the competition? And they are trying to define a product that they need, which means they can go after a chunk of that market and get that return on investment. And then the ones that are going to have to deliver that product are from the operations side. So whether it's manufacturing or design or whatever it is, right? And these are competing camps. And so what you need to find is an intersecting solution, right? And it's really hard to find, and it often doesn't exist, and it's particularly fragile. You find what you think is a product definition that's going to work, and then the operations guys come back and tell you, no, we can't deliver it in 18 months. It's going to take 2 years, and that blows the marketing guys' plans, right? So it's a constant iteration process. So that's why I call it the keeper of the vision. It's the guy who understands what you're trying to do. You can speak enough of everybody, all the other groups' languages to be able to negotiate a compromise when a problem comes up. And he throws in some creative juices to come up with creative solutions when things look really nasty. As I got into the transit community, I kept looking for the product architect, and I never found one. And in America, that's particularly the problem, is you have politicians who are playing the role of product architect, and you got 4 or 5 of them doing it at the same time, competing with one another. And so you don't have a clear vision. It doesn't last long. It doesn't get followed through on, and they don't have the technical expertise they need to work out the problems that get discovered in that vision. And so if I was in a new country and I was able to solve the problem, I would find the right powers that be, and I would find the product architect for the transportation needs of a city, right? And I would empower them to play that role. And that means everything from where we're going to use buses, to where we're going to use pod cars, to where we're going to use bicycles, to what are all the various constituencies. Here's the master plan for how we solve this. Now, I see that here. I'm just visiting Malaysia now for almost 3 months, and it's a really highly developed, in Kuala Lumpur, it's a really highly developed urban area. And there are these giant communities that have been developed, and you can tell the difference. Some were master planned, and some were not. And the master plan ones work out a lot better because the giant development organization that came in to do it had a master plan, put somebody in charge, and they followed through on it. And so you didn't get those kinds of problems. And where they didn't have one of those guys, then, things don't work so well. Each piece works, but they don't interact particularly well. And for transit, that's what you need. The pieces have to interact really well. So I think what America is lacking is a national level transit architect, and probably down to the state levels and all the way through. And I think if I was going to try to take a developing nation and have it do a better job than we did, I think that's a key thing I would try to address.
Thanks, Steve. Personal note again. So it's important to see what major infrastructure or major project has actually been spawned and been successful. And I find the Paula project in the United States one of the best project ever made in the world, actually. So I think it started with a very good rhetoric from Kennedy, who said, why do we want to go to the moon? Well, because it's there, and it's something that is hard to do. And I think it's very important to have in the back of your head that everything is not easy, and to have people work on a concept that everybody can go toward, because this is quite a fragmented industry right now. People don't work together that well, especially not the industry itself. And it's very important to go ahead with something that actually improves the collaboration efforts. And if something we can take from, I think, is the Apollo or the going to the moon project and the idea behind that. You're putting out a really big bag of money and say, you know what, compete, come up with the best options, the best ideas. And there's something like that. It's a very good way to go forward, is to think, how can we make a competition that is really makes people interested, and coupled with financing, of course. And I will actually address this tomorrow. So that is very important. And I found a couple of very interesting ideas I would like to share, see what happens, what you think about it. But yes, this is it's fragmented, it's difficult, and to have system engineering or architects are not that really available in this field. That's correct. Anyone else?
Oh, yeah, I'd just like to say that I welcome those of you who are in the Western Hemisphere and in Asia to join us this evening at 7 p.m. Central Time, which is the same as Chicago for those of you who think in that manner. And I'll send around details of the timing. And you're all, because of those who are in America, it's possible to both be at this 9 a.m. Central and the 7 p.m. Central events coming up in this both today and tomorrow. And for those of you who are in Asia, we will be meeting in your time zone starting at 7 p.m. here locally. And we welcome any of you who've been here to this session to join these other 3 sessions going forward. And I think we've gotten to the point here. We're about 3 hours, and it's lunchtime here. And I think that this is a good stopping point. If there's any other closing remarks, go around the table here, and if anybody would like to say one parting shot, here's your chance.
Yes, please go ahead. If not,
I'd like to thank everybody again for being here, and hopefully next time we can do it in person here in Alabama, and I'd be happy to host everyone. So
thank you very much, Steve.